I never planned to air our family laundry like this. But after what happened at my father's birthday party last month, I need to get this story off my chest. Maybe it will help someone else who's been living in shadows that aren't of their own making. My name is Grace. I'm 34, divorced, and raising my son Ethan, who just turned 8. My sister Charlotte is 2 years younger than me, but somehow has always seemed light years ahead, at least according to my father. The day had started like any other family gathering at my father and stepmother's sprawling suburban home. I spent the morning helping Ethan pick out a gift for his grandfather, a vintage book about World War II aircraft that had cost nearly half my weekly grocery budget. Ethan was proud of it. I was proud of him for saving his allowance to contribute. "Do you think Grandpa will like it, Mom?" Ethan asked for the 5th time as we pulled into the driveway behind Charlotte's gleaming Tesla. "He'll love it, honey," I said, ignoring the knot forming in my stomach. These family gatherings always left me feeling like I was 16 again, inadequate and perpetually disappointing. Dad greeted us at the door with a quick hug for me and an enthusiastic one for Ethan. My stepmother Vivian air-kissed my cheeks, whispering, "You look tired, dear," before ushering us inside. Charlotte was already holding court in the living room, regaling everyone with stories of her latest business acquisition. My sister, the marketing executive turned entrepreneur, had recently bought out her 3rd company. Dad beamed at her like she was still the 8-year-old bringing home straight A's. "Grace, you made it!" Charlotte called out, glass of champagne in hand. Her voice carried that familiar note of surprise, as if my ability to show up on time was somehow remarkable. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, setting Dad's gift on the table with the others. Charlotte's gift box was 3 times the size of ours and wrapped in paper that probably cost more than my dress. The afternoon progressed predictably. Charlotte dominated conversations. Dad reminisced about her achievements. Vivian fussed over the catering she'd ordered. I helped in the kitchen because that's what I always do, make myself useful in the background. Dinner was a blur of my father's favorite foods and conversation that drifted around me like I was a rock in a stream. No one asked about my new position at the library. No one commented on how well Ethan was doing in school, despite everything he'd been through. We were furniture, present but unremarkable. Until the toasts began. Dad stood first, raising his glass to thank everyone for coming. Uncle Robert followed with a joke about Dad's advancing age. Then Charlotte rose, champagne flute held high. "To Dad," she began, smiling broadly. "And to the successful one in the family, me!" Everyone laughed and applauded. I forced my lips into what I hoped looked like an amused smile. But Charlotte wasn't finished. She turned slightly, her gaze settling on me with practiced precision. "Unlike some people who couldn't even keep a husband," the room rippled with uncomfortable chuckles. My father laughed outright. Vivian placed a hand on my arm and stage whispered, "She's just bitter, dear." Bitter? Is that what they thought? That my divorce was the result of some personal failing? Some bitterness in me that had driven James away? Before I could respond, I felt Ethan shift beside me. Then, to my horror, he stood up, his small shoulders squared. "Mom didn't leave, Daddy," he announced, his voice clear and steady in the suddenly quiet room. "Daddy left because of her." He pointed directly at Charlotte. The silence that followed was absolute. Crystal glasses froze midway to lips. Forks hovered over half-eaten cake. 20 pairs of eyes darted between my son, my sister, and me. Charlotte recovered first. "What an imagination!" she trilled, her laugh brittle. "Kids say the darndest things, don't they?" I placed my hand on Ethan's shoulder, gently guiding him back to his seat. "Ethan, honey, it's true. he insisted, his voice wavering now. I heard Daddy on the phone. He told his friend that Aunt Charlotte was the reason. That's why he moved away. My father cleared his throat. I think the boy's confused. Grace, perhaps you should— He's not confused, I heard myself say. The words hung in the air between us, and suddenly I was tired of carrying this secret, tired of protecting people who had never protected me. What exactly are you saying? Charlotte demanded, her perfectly lined lips pressed thin. I turned to Ethan. Sweetie, can you go with Vivian to get some ice cream from the kitchen? Vivian, for once grateful for an escape, quickly ushered my son away. When they were gone, I took a deep breath. James was having an affair with Charlotte for 8 months before our divorce. The collective gasp in the room might have been comical under other circumstances. That's absurd, Charlotte snapped. Dad, she's obviously still not coping well with the divorce. My father looked between us, confusion evident on his face. Charlotte wouldn't do that, he said finally, with the same unwavering faith he'd always placed in her. She did, I said quietly. I found the messages, the hotel receipts. I confronted James, and he admitted everything. Then why didn't you say something? My cousin Emma asked from across the table. Why indeed? The answer was sitting at the head of the table, looking at Charlotte with concern while barely glancing my way. Because I was trying to protect this family, I said. Because I didn't want to be the one who ruined the image of perfect Charlotte. Charlotte's face had gone white beneath her carefully applied blush. You're lying, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? I reached for my purse, pulled out my phone. Should I show everyone the screenshots I kept? The ones I never showed Dad, because I knew he wouldn't believe me anyway? My father finally looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. You have proof? I nodded, my throat tight. I never wanted to use it. I just wanted to move on, to build a new life for Ethan and me. But I'm done being the family's scapegoat. I'm done letting Charlotte's success story overshadow my truth. Charlotte stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and— Sit down, Dad said, his voice uncharacteristically sharp. Grace, show me. I handed him my phone, open to the folder I'd never deleted. He scrolled slowly, his expression darkening with each swipe. When he looked up, his eyes moved past me to fix on Charlotte. How could you do this to your sister? Charlotte's facade cracked. It wasn't like that, she whispered. James and we didn't plan it. It just happened. Just happened? I echoed. For 8 months? While you were maid of honor at my best friend's wedding? While you helped Ethan pick out my birthday present? I loved him, Charlotte said simply, as if that explained everything. And I didn't? I felt tears threatening, but blinked them away. You didn't understand him, Charlotte insisted. You were always so caught up with Ethan, with your little library job. James needed someone who could match his ambition. There it was, the same narrative I'd heard my entire life. Charlotte was the ambitious one, the successful one. I was just there. Is that what you told yourself to justify sleeping with your sister's husband? My Aunt Patricia asked, breaking the stunned silence around the table. Charlotte flushed. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Dad interrupted. I understand that I've been blind. He turned to me, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before when he looked at me. Respect. Grace, I owe you an apology, he said. Many apologies. The words I'd waited decades to hear fell flat in the wreckage of the moment. Too little, Too late, perhaps, but still something. Charlotte stood again. I'm leaving. This is obviously not the time for. Sit down, Dad repeated. You don't get to walk away from this. What followed was 2 hours of painful family therapy that none of us had signed up for. Old wounds were opened, childhood slights revisited. The systematic favoritism that had shaped both Charlotte and me was laid bare for everyone to see. Aunt Patricia revealed how she'd always seen what was happening, but had been shut down by my father whenever she tried to intervene. Uncle Robert admitted he'd suspected something between Charlotte and James, but had kept quiet to keep the peace. Cousins confessed to noticing how differently Dad treated us. Through it all, Charlotte alternated between defiance and tears, while I felt increasingly detached, as if watching the scene unfold from a distance. When Ethan and Vivian eventually returned, the atmosphere had shifted. Vivian, who had apparently heard everything from the kitchen, looked at me with new eyes. I had no idea, she said softly. I'm so sorry, Grace. Ethan climbed into my lap, too big for it really, but needing the comfort. Are you mad at me, Mom? He whispered. I hugged him close. No, baby. Sometimes the truth needs to come out, even when it's hard. That was 4 weeks ago. The aftermath has been complicated. Charlotte moved to the West Coast last week. A career opportunity that conveniently takes her 3,000 miles away from the fallout. Before she left, she came to my apartment. No designer purse, no perfect makeup. Just my sister, looking smaller somehow. I know you can't forgive me, she said. I wouldn't either. Then why are you here? Because I need you to know that it wasn't about you. It was never about you not being enough. It was about me never feeling like I was enough. I let her in. We talked until dawn. Really talked. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives. About growing up in Dad's house with his impossible expectations. About how his favor had been both a blessing and curse for her, just as his disregard had shaped me. He made me believe I was special, Charlotte said. So special that the rules didn't apply to me, that I deserved whatever I wanted. She looked down at her hands. Even if it belonged to someone else. That doesn't excuse what you did. No, she agreed. Nothing does. We didn't part as friends. I'm not sure we ever were. But we parted with understanding, which is its own kind of freedom. Dad has been calling daily, coming by with groceries, asking about Ethan's school projects, listening, actually listening when I talk about my life. It's strange and uncomfortable and 30 years too late, but it's something. Last week, he asked if I would consider family therapy. Real therapy, not another emotional explosion at a dinner table. All of us, he said. Me, you, Vivian, even Charlotte when she visits. Why now? I asked him. He looked older suddenly, his confidence dimmed. Because I almost lost you, he said. Because I've been losing you for years and was too stubborn to see it. I haven't given him an answer yet. Healing takes time, and trust takes even longer. As for me, I'm learning to step out of the shadows. I accepted the promotion at the library I'd been hesitant to pursue. I enrolled in the graduate program I'd deferred when I got pregnant with Ethan. Small steps toward the life I put on hold when I was trying to be the kind of wife James wanted, the kind of daughter my father might notice. Ethan and I are seeing a therapist of our own. He has questions about his father, about what happened. I'm learning to answer them honestly without burdening him with adult complexities. James called when news of the birthday party meltdown reached him through family channels. He apologized, not for the affair, which he's never really acknowledged was wrong, but for how things turned out. as if our marriage dissolving was some unavoidable natural disaster rather than the result of choices he made. I didn't need his apology. I realized I haven't needed anything from James in a long time. That's the thing about living in shadows. You get used to making do with less light. But once you step into the sun, you realize how much you've been missing. Yesterday, Ethan asked me if we could invite Grandpa to his soccer game this weekend. Do you want him there? I asked carefully. Ethan considered this seriously. He seems different now, like he sees us. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. Yes, I agreed. I think he does. I'm not naive enough to believe that one dramatic revelation has fixed our family. The patterns of a lifetime don't change overnight. Charlotte will always be Charlotte. Dad will always have to fight his instinct to defend her. I will always have to resist the urge to make myself smaller to keep the peace. But something fundamental has shifted. The story we've been telling ourselves about who we are as a family has been rewritten. The roles we were assigned, golden child, scapegoat, distant patriarch, no longer fit quite so neatly. I've stopped measuring my worth against Charlotte's achievements, stopped seeking Dad's approval in everything I do, stopped apologizing for the life I've built on my own terms. My sister's toast at that disastrous birthday dinner wasn't wrong. She is successful. In the narrow, conventional way our father taught us to define success. But success isn't just corner offices and Tesla cars and holiday homes. Success is also raising a son brave enough to speak truth when adults won't. It's rebuilding a life after betrayal. It's finding your voice when you've been silenced. Sometimes success is simply surviving with your compassion intact. By that measure, I'm doing just fine. Tomorrow, Ethan and I are having dinner with Dad, just the three of us. He wants to hear about my graduate program, about Ethan's science project, about our lives. For the first time, I believe he actually wants to listen. For the first time, I'm ready to be heard. They say confession is good for the soul. I don't know if sharing this story has lightened my burden or just transferred it to different shoulders. But I do know that secrets thrive in silence, and family myths survive because we're afraid to challenge them. So here's my truth, offered without bitterness or apology. I am grace. I am enough. I always was. And to anyone living in someone else's shadow, step into the light. It's where you belonged all along.